All right, guys, like I promised, we're going to read 2 chapters today out of the wishing chair. We're going to get going. This is chapter 22 called The Strange Tower. The hole was dark and it smelled a bit funny. Molly clung tightly to Peter's hand. It was strange being so small. Harriet the mouse went on in front, and they could see her little gleaming eyes as she turned around now and again. Once Peter trod on her tail and she gave an angry squeal. "So sorry," said Peter. "I keep forgetting you have such a long tail, Harriet." At last they came to a place where the tunnel widened out into a room. It was very warm there. A large mouse pounced on Harriet and gave her a hug. "Oh, Auntie, you are at home," said Harriet. "See, I've brought you 2 children. They wanted to get into the tower, so I thought they might as well use our mouse tunnel. It's the only good way in." "Good afternoon," said Harriet's aunt. She seemed a very ordinary mouse, except for that she wore large spectacles, which mean glasses. Her home was chiefly made of paper, it seemed. There were hundreds of little bits of it, made neatly into beds and tables. "What are the children going to do?" said Harriet's aunt. "We would like to know how to get into the cellars," said Peter. "You see, if you show us the way there, we can get into the tower above, perhaps, and find our friend that we're looking for." "Well, come this way, then," said the aunt, "but look out for the cat, won't you? She sometimes waits about in the cellar, and you don't want her to catch you." I could see this being a potential problem. She took them down another narrow passage, and then the children found themselves walking out of a hole into a dark, damp cellar. "Goodbye," said the mouse. "I'll put a little candle just inside this hole so that you know the way back. Children, I hope you will find your friend." Molly took Peter's hand. The cellar was very dark. A little bit of light came from somewhere to the right. "The cellar steps must go up towards that light," said Peter. "Go on, walk carefully in case we bump into anything, and look out for the cat. We are very small, you know." They found the steps. They seemed very, very big to the children, now that they were so tiny, and Peter had to help Molly up each one. At last they got to the top. They looked under the door and stood at the top of the steps beyond the kitchen. "Do you suppose the enchanter is back again?" whispered Molly. "No," said Peter. "We should have heard that clip-clapping noise if he had come back. I think we are safe at the moment, but we must hide at once if we hear him coming. And look out for the cat, Molly." What are they doing? They're climbing on those huge stairs. "Can we squeeze under the door, do you think?" asked Molly. But they couldn't. The crack wasn't big enough. However, the door was not quite closed, and by pushing with all their might, the 2 children managed to get it just enough open to squeeze through. They looked around. They were in a very big kitchen, or it seemed big to them because they were so tiny. They could not see Chingy anywhere. "Come on," said Peter, giving Molly his hand. "We'll go into the next room." "Meow," suddenly came a voice, and a large tabby cat with green eyes came out from behind a chair. Molly felt quite shaky at the knees. She knew what a mouse must feel like when it saw a cat. What a giant of an animal it seemed. "Don't show it you're frightened," said Peter. "It smelt us, and we don't smell like mice. Stay here a moment, Molly, and I'll go over and stroke and reach out to it." "Oh, Peter, you are so brave," said Molly. Peter walked boldly to the cat and stroked her legs. She seemed very pleased and purred loudly. Peter beckoned to Molly. She ran over and pet the cat, too. It was a friendly creature. It went into the next room, purring to Molly and Peter, who followed her. This room was very small and lighted by a candle. No daylight came into the tower, for there were no windows. No one in this little room either. A dish stood on the floor with some milk, and a large round basket with a big cushion in it stood nearby. "This must be the cat's room," said Molly. "There's no furniture in it. I do wonder where Chingy is." There were some stairs going upwards from the cat's little room. The children climbed with them with great difficulty, for they were very big. And they were big. Before they got to the top, they heard the sound of crying. It was Chingy. He must indeed be very unhappy if he were crying. He hardly ever cried. Hal, Molly, and Peter tried to climb those stairs quickly. At last, they reached the top and found themselves before a big open door. They ran in. Chingy was lying on a small bed, crying as if his heart would break. Chingy, Chingy, don't cry. We are here to rescue you, shouted Peter, hoping that Chingy would hear his voice, for it was a very small voice now. Chingy did hear it. He sat up at once, with tears still running down his cheeks. He saw Molly and Peter and stared at them in surprise. Chingy, cried Molly, running over to him. We've come to save you. Cheer up. We've got through a mouse hole after an elf had made us small. How can we save you? Oh, you are good friends to come and look for me, said Chingy, drying his eyes. I hate being here. I hate this enchanter. He wants me to do bad spells, and I won't, and I'm afraid that I would be here for hundreds of years and never see you again. Tell us how we can get away, said Peter. Well, the only way it seems to be is the mouse hole you came by, said Chingy, so I suppose the only way out is the mouse hole too, but I'm too big to go that way. Well, I'll go down to Dimple's cottage and ask her for a pill to make you small like us, said Peter at once. Then when I bring it back to you, you can take it and we'll all go down the hole and get Dimple to make us the right size again. Find the wishing chair and go home. See? It sounds easy enough, said Chingy, but I don't somehow think it will go quite so nicely as that. Still, we can try. Leave Molly here with me, Peter, and you go down the mouse hole again. We'll see him safely to the cellar door, said Molly. So they all went down the stairs again and were going through the cat's little room when Chingy turned pale. The enchanter is coming back, he said. Oh, where can we hide? Quick, 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 think of somewhere, cried Molly. There came a clip-clapping noise like thunder as she spoke. The tower split in half and a door came. It opened and in strode the enchanter, tall and thin, with his beard sweeping the ground. But before he had seen the two children, Peter had pulled Molly over to the cat's basket. The big cat was lying there comfortably. The children scrambled in and lay down by the cat, hiding in her thick fur. Chingy was left by himself. I smell children, said the enchanter. How could children get into my tower? Master, said Chingy, how could children get into your tower? Said Chingy, with a look of surprise. The enchanter sniffed and began to look all around the two rooms, but the cat did not stir. Clip-clap stroked her as she passed, and she purred, but she stayed in her basket, and Molly and Peter cuddled closely in her fur, hoping she would not move at all. The enchanter did not think of looking in the cat's basket. He soon gave up the hunt and ran down the stairs, calling Chingy to go with him. Go quickly now, Peter, whispered Chingy. Before he followed Clip-clap, Molly can stay with the cat. She's safe here. Quick as could be, Peter slipped across the floor to the cellar door, squeezed through the small opening, and made his way down the steps. He saw the tiny candlelight burning at the entrance of the mouse hole and ran across to it. In he went and made his way up to the mouse room. Harriet the mouse was still there, talking to her auntie. Please, will you take me back to Dimple? Asked Peter. It's very important. Harriet gave him her paw and took him up to the hole and out into the open again. Then they hurried again to Dimple's cottage. Soon Peter had told Dimple all that had happened. She gave him another red and green pill and warned him to be careful not to let Clip-clap see him. Then off they went to the mouse hole again. Chingy would soon be safe. And that is the end of that chapter, but we are going to read the next chapter, called The Great Escape. Peter hurried from Dimple's cottage, holding in his hand the pill that would make Chingy small, as he was. Then they all could escape down the mouse hole. He ran down the hole and made his way to the cellar. He climbed up the steps of the kitchen and peeped under the door, but there was no one in the kitchen. He ran over the floor to the little room belonging to the cat. The big gray tabby was still in the basket, and Molly was there too, hiding safely under the thick fur. Good. Chingy is upstairs with the enchanter, she whispered. Just at that moment there came footsteps down the hall, and the enchanter came in. The cat jumped out of her basket and went to greet him, rubbing against Clip-Clap's legs and purring loudly. Molly and Peter crouched down in the basket and tried to hide under the cushion, but at last the enchanter saw them. That's not good. Aha! I thought I sniffed children, he said. He came over the basket and he looked down. How small you are, he said. I didn't know there were such small children to be found. What have you got your hand in, little boy? Oh dear. What Peter was holding so tightly was the little green and red pill that was to make Chingy small enough to go down the mouse hole. Peter put his hand behind his back and glared at the tall enchanter. But it was no use. He had to show Clip-Clap what he had, and no sooner did the enchanter see what the green and saw the green and red pill, and he guessed what it was for. Oh, he said, so you made yourself small first, did you? Come through a mouse hole, I guess, thinking that Chingy would be made small, so that might help you escape. Well, I'm going to spoil that. You shall grow big again, and you won't be able to creep down any mouse holes. You can stay here and help Chingy work for me. He tapped Molly on the head, and then Peter, and they shot up to their own size again and stared at Clip-Clap in alarm and dismay. What a horrid ending to all their plans. They had thought themselves so clever, too. Well, said Clip-Clap, looking at them, you won't escape in a hurry now, I promise you. No one knows the secret of making the door in this tower but me. Chingy, Chingy, come here and see your fine friends now. Chingy came running down the stairs and stopped in great dismay when he saw Peter and Molly, both the right size, standing in front of the enchanter. You had all laid fine plans for escape, hadn't you? Said Clip-Clap. Well, now you can just settle down to be working hard for me and using those good brains of yours for my spells. Go and help Chingy to polish my bedroom floor and use that. And after that, you can clean all the silver wands I use for my magic. The three went upstairs very sadly in silence. Chingy handed each child a large yellow duster, and all three went down onto their hands and knees and began to polish the wooden floor. Don't say a word until we hear Clip-Clap go out again, whispered Chingy. He has ears as sharp as a hare's. That's like a rabbit hair. So, nobody said a word until they heard the Clip-Clap crashing noise and knew the enchanter had gone out again. Then they stood up and looked at one another. What are we going to do now? Groaned Peter. Listen, said Chingy. I have a plan. Where's the wishing chair? Under a bramble bush outside the tower, he said. But what's the good of that? We can't get to it, and we certainly can't get the chair in. I'm not so sure of that, said Chingy. You know that mouse you told me about, Dimple's servant. Well, if we go speak to her, Peter, and tell her to go to Dimple and tell her what's happened, she might be able to make the wishing chair small enough for Harriet to get in down the mouse hole and into the cellar. I know a spell that would make it the right size. And then, when Clip-Clap does his disappearing act and goes through the tower door, we'll fly out too, you see. Oh, Chingy. Chingy, you are clever, cried Molly in delight. Peter, go down to the cellar and call Harriet. She may be somewhere about. If not, her auntie will surely be there. So Peter hurried down to the cellar and called for Harriet, but she wasn't there. But her auntie came, and the brown mouse with spectacles on. Peter told her all about what happened and begged her to go and tell Dimple the elf. She hurried off at once, and Peter waited anxiously to see what would happen next. But Clip-Clap came back before anything else had happened. He set the three to work polishing his magic wands, but took the magic out of them first. He wasn't going to have Chingy doing any magic with them. After tea, Clip-Clap went out again, and Peter hurried down to the cellar. To his great delight, he found Harriet there, and just inside the mouse hole she had their wishing chair. It was as small as a doll's house chair. My auntie told me what had happened, whispered Harriet. I told Dimple, my mistress, and we found the wishing chair. Dimple made it small enough for me to take down the mouse hole, and here it is. Good luck! She pushed the tiny wishing chair out of the hole. Peter picked it up gladly and ran up the cellar steps with it. How glad Chingy and Molly were to see it. Now, said Chingy, I must make it big again. He felt in his pockets and took out a duster colored yellow and green. It had a strange smelling polish in the middle in a great smear. Chingy began to polish the chair as hard as he could, and as he polished, it grew bigger and bigger. The children watched in amazement. At last it was usual size. Where shall we hide it? Said Molly. I say, don't. Let's hide it anywhere, said Peter suddenly. What about us getting into it and waiting till Clip-Clop comes back? Then as soon as he opens the door, we'll yell to the chair to fly out, and off we go. The enchanter won't know what's happening until it's too late to stop us. Well, that is a splendid idea, said Chingy at once. We'll do it. Come on, get in, you two, and the enchanter may be in at any moment. We must be ready. The good old wishing chair still has its wings, said Molly thankfully. Wouldn't it be awful if they went and couldn't fly away? Don't say things like that in front of the chair, said Peter. You know how silly it can be sometimes. Haven't you forgotten how it landed us in a chimney? Shh, said Chingy. I hear Clip-Clop coming. Crash! The tower split in two, and the great door appeared in the slit. It opened, and in strode Clip-Clop, calling Chingy. Hey, Chingy, Chingy! Home, wishing chair! Home! Yelled Chingy. Hello, Clip-Clop, here I am. The chair rose up into the air, flew past the left ear of the astonished enchanter, and shot out the door before Clip-Clop could shut it. And they were safely out in the wood again. There's Dimple and Harriet below, waving like mad, said Peter. Wave back, you two. They all waved to Dimple and Harriet and called goodbye. We'll send them a postcard when we get back, said Chingy. They were very good to us. Won't Clip-Clop be angry to think we've escaped after all, said Molly. I say, on you go and tell your mother you're safe, said Peter. She's very worried about you. I'll go tonight when you're both in bed, said Chingy. I'll take you home safely first. My, what adventures we've had this morning. I'm not going to quarrel ever again, said Molly. As the chair flew in at the playroom door, she jumped off and flung her arms around Chingy. It was horrible when you didn't come back. I didn't mean what I said. You think you will always be our friend, won't you, Chingy? Of course, said Chingy, grinning all over his cheeky pixie face. I would have come back the next day. I just had a bad temper. We all were. I'm sorry about it too, said Peter. Anyway, we're all together again, friends as much as before. You'd better run and show your mother you're all right, said Chingy. Mothers are such worriers, you know. You've not been to tea, so yours will wonder if you're all right. Goodbye. Thanks for rescuing me. Peter and Molly ran off happily. Thank goodness everything was all right again. Good old wishing chair. What would they do without it? And that is the end of the second chapter that we read today. Mega read aloud today. And tomorrow, chapter 24 is called Big Ears, the Goblin. All right, hope you guys are having a good day, and I will see you very soon.